week has passed since the ceremony of the elites. The people of Bulwark in the land of Jagran anxiously waited some form of relief from this plague that has killed so many. With every passing day, more and more infectious cases popped up and began to overwhelm the populace. Mute wondered what life was like outside the fortress's borders and decided to contact those suffering from what was deemed as the sickness. Once the elite training session ended for that day, the sun began to set and a tired Mute headed over to Nylox. While Mute approached, he saw Nylox getting into an argument with one of the castle servants. So, you were just going to expect me to play dumb with tirades, disappearance these past several days? Is that it? Questioned Nylox. Well, you see, sir, Tyrant has not been here for a few days, as you know. Wouldn't it make sense for him to take time to rest, especially in times like these? The servant replied sheepishly, twiddling his fingers. Resting in a time like this is for the vulnerable, not for the elites of Waxen. Go and alert the barrack master of this. The man paused for a couple seconds and cleared his throat. Well, yes, sir. I will get back to you on that. When he scurried off, Nylox turned his attention to Mute. You've become quite good at dueling and parrying exercises. Every drill seems to become less of a challenge for almighty Mute. Nylox chuckled and gave Mute some water. Mute gulped the water swiftly and wiped his mouth, releasing a heavy huff and a smirk. Mute went over to his satchel to acquire his writing supplies and began to scribble a message to Nylox that read, I would like to travel outside the walls of Bulwark and go around the little towns to meet with the locals. Nylox read the note and gave an odd look, frowning his face towards Mute. What could you possibly want with the citizens? I'm not sure if you've noticed, but people are becoming ill. It would seem foolish to travel around and outside the royal courts. What is your real motive for this? Nylox asked sternly. Mute placed his hand on his chin, scratching it while gazing at the ground and then back to Nylox. He gave him a shrug with a half-hearted smile. Although I don't advise it, nor have I had any members of the elites milling around in peasant land, Duke Waxen isn't here to order me around. Nylox leaned in and placed his hand on Mute's shoulder. But as always, between you and me, go knock yourself out. Just be ready for tomorrow's stamina training. I'll be heading to my family now. Nylox smirked. Do not be a Hunover. Nylox removed his hand and slowly headed away for his home outside the training grounds near the estates northwest of Waxen Citadel. Mute wasted no time. With a renewed burst of energy, he snatched his satchel with his writing tools, documents, some bread, and a few gold coins. When he left the training arena, he looked back at the castle stronghold and saw the translucent windows glistening from the reflection of the sunset, which began to crawl under the sea. He walked steadily outside the main walls, and a guard stopped him. Identification. Mute reached into his pocket to reveal his insignia of the elite Waxen Corps. It depicted a vulture that clutched a purple garment in one claw and a long sword in the other. A golden crown was placed over the bird's head. The guard examined it. Ah, I see you're part of the elites of Waxen. I suggest you be careful out there. The people are not as they were during the ceremony. The facade of joy is dwindling. Puzzled by the last remark, Mute started his little journey across the shops and bars around the towns outside the main gates of the outer wall. He saw people on ladders lighting the lights for the posts and on top of buildings. The further down the road he went, the more the wooden and stone buildings looked deteriorated. They possessed chipped corners and fading colors. Mute began to see that the once lively populace had become sluggish, pale vessels, scrubbing their shoes on the street. Mute looked over to a nearby lit tavern, where people could be heard shouting and clamoring. Then, a loud, guttural sound erupted from the tavern. A man ran from the rowdy scene and coughed up a grotesque mucus littered of green and yellowish spots and spat it to the ground. His eyes were blackened and his face gaunt while his body was rotund. Why do you look so healthy, you stunning lad? The portly man quipped as he wiped his mouth and started stumbling his way, belching and wheezing over to Mute. I'll have whatever you got, you glorious, hardy man. Give me something. He began to rapidly increase his speed towards Mute. Mute looked startled, slowly paced back, put his hands up. I know you! You're one of those elites, part of the Waxon's personal lapdogs, parading around your fancy horses, your fancy swords, and fancy armor. Well, guess what I got? Mute reached down to grip his sword in his side, clutching the handle. The man continued. I got my ale and nothing else. But guess what, lapdog? The ale shortage is here, and you know what that means, you healthy bastard? I can't drink this agonizing pain away. The drunkard closed the distance and sprinted a few seconds before stumbling and slipping on the shaky ground. A loud and piercing scream echoed through the walkways. He grabbed his foot. Shit! My foot! I broke my foot! He yelled. As he started whelping, his coughing began to creep up again. The drunkard rolled over and began to spew fluids and mucus-infused blood, choking on the chunks of waste. The bystanders watched intensely. The last sound that was heard was a gurgle, and the man lay dead on the road, his spilled ale spreading to the gravel and stone cracks. Horrified, Mute dashed away to another part of the town, but the scenery did not change. The streets were either filled with broken bottles or bodies slumped near walls or chairs. The second Mute looked to his left, he saw two figures with long beaked masks wearing black robe clothing. They were pushing a large wooden cart with bodies stacked atop one another. Mute began to move backwards as he took in the scene. A shiver zapped through him as he sprinted to yet another location in the once lively town. None of the different streets changed. Death, decay, and defeat soured his heart. Tears began to swell in his eyes as he thought to himself, how have I not noticed? A broken, overwhelmed Mute found a nearby wall on which to lean. He then slowly crumbled his way to the ground, covering his eyes to hide the wet face that moistened his cheeks. A few seconds later, Mute looked up and saw across from him a famished orphan boy, cuddled against the wall, dirty and ill. With nothing but the clothes on his back and a shoe on one foot, the boy looked at Mute with wide eyes, staring into his soul. Mute could hear the rumbling of the boy's stomach. The boy began to murmur to himself. Mute rummaged through his satchel to find a piece of bread. Mute slowly approached the boy, extending his right arm with an open palm towards the orphan. The little one stared at the bread for a few seconds, and then snatched the food, which was quickly devoured. A slight smile crept on Mute as he walked back to pick up his things and headed back home. Suddenly, a faint voice was heard above him. Mute? When he cranked up his neck, he could see a woman arching her back over a wooden porch above him. Mute looked puzzled and gave an awkward wave. When she approached him, her nightgown and long black hair swayed through the wind as the full darkness of the night overcast the skies. The woman ran from her porch to quickly meet with Mute outside her home. I never would have thought someone of your status would be outside those walls, she remarked. Here, come inside. You look stressed. Looking back, Mute pointed to the direction of the wall, but then noticed the boy had left the alley. Mute placed his arm back down his side. I think I scared him off. Come with me, let's eat something, said the woman. Once the two made their way to her door, he looked in the woman's eyes, seeing the crisp, placid blue that sparked a memory. This was the servant girl from the castle. She opened the door and headed towards the candles and lanterns which lit up the room. She walked over to the table and patted a chair, saying, Here, come sit. I'll prepare the soup for the two of us. When Mute went to the table where he put his bag and emptied out his writing supplies, he then peered over to see the woman and lock eyes with her. The two gazed off, being mesmerized by each other's eyes. Mute's emeralds collided with those of her turquoise. They then darted away, going back to their activities. She approached Mute with a bowl of soup and began to talk. I saw you out there, looking frightened and depressed. Mute blushed as he began to scribble his thoughts on paper. She placed her soft hands on Mute's shoulders, whispering, But I watched what you did, giving that boy your bread. I feel bad that I judged you before. My name is Iris. We've met before at the castle. Mute nodded in agreement as Iris moved her beige hand, grasped her spoon, and began eating. Mute imitated Iris and continued to finish his thoughts on the paper. He pushed his written message towards Iris. It read, "I should apologize for the last time we met. I'm not a well-spoken person, and you caught me off guard." Iris finished reading the note, and a little chuckle came from her. "I'm not worried about that anymore. I just can't believe people actually call you this name. What is your real name?" A melancholy face overcame Mute. He released a heavy breath and closed his eyes. He took his pen and wrote down a few words. "Always has been." "Oh, that's interesting. Is this something temporary or from childhood?" Mute grasped the writing pad and wrote the same text. "Always has been." Once she took her last sip of her soup, Iris's eyes sparkled as she reached with her left hand for Mute's finished bowl and placed her right hand on his shoulder. "Well, you've spoken volume with your actions this evening. A quiet man is a calculated man. I'm humbled by your presence, elite of Waxen." Iris smiled as she walked back to the kitchen and placed her dishes down to clean. "I suggest you spend the night here downstairs. A lot of mugging and other criminal mischief has happened these days during this unrest. Money is tight for all of us in this struggle." Mute looked behind him to see a comfy chair covered in bear fur and made his way over to sit down. Iris looked over to Mute and saw him pulling the fur over his body. He mouthed the words, "Thank you." Iris responded with a subtle nod as she blew out the candles and took the lantern up the stairs to her bedroom. Mute released a heavy sigh and shut his eyes to enter his slumber. After a couple hours of sleep, a light spread through the window into the room. Mute could feel the warm sun rays pierce his eyelids. Releasing a yawn deep from his soul, Mute stretched his arms, ready for the training session at the barracks. He strolled over to the table and reached for all supplies, ready to place into his leather satchel. Mute's fingers froze, placed onto the notepad. The elite twisted his head upwards, hearing the sound of screeched wood. Iris was strolling in her bedroom. Mute pondered for a second, clicking his fingernails of what action to take. Should I say goodbye to her? Mute thought. With precious seconds withering away, Mute grasped his writing quill and scribbled on the notepad. He wrote one last note for Iris. Mute opened the door to the crisp morning air. You could hear Iris stomp down the stairs as he stepped forward into the light. Closing the door gently, Mute traveled to the barracks, humming to himself. While Iris stepped onto the ground floor, she looked at the table and saw the note left by Mute. She read what the elite had written, and her eyes lit up, with a glossy tint and her cheeks turning rosy. She clutched the gold coins in her soft hands and whispered, "Huh. Thank you, Mute."